Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 25 series, Can We Save the Oakland A's? And this is going to be a bit of a bridge episode here. If you're looking closely, you'll know that we've simmed ahead a month since the beginning of the offseason. Normally, we kind of play through the episodes in real time, but we were in a tough situation, if you remember from the last episode, where our scout had just resigned at the beginning of the offseason. So we were kind of flying relatively blind in terms of preparing for salary arbitration and trying to figure out what, if anything, we could potentially get in return for the players on our team that we wanted to move on from this offseason. So it became a very long, slog-like effort for me to get through the last month of the game, and it just was not conducive to a episode. So I just kind of, after a while, just decided I'm going to play these last couple weeks on my own and then give everyone an update on where we are with the team as of the beginning of free agency. So that's what we're going to do right now, and we do have a new scout hired. So hopefully going forward, things will be a bit more normal. So since we simmed through award season in addition to the arbitration period, no awards at all for the Oakland A's this year. Kind of the highlighted things: Jacob deGrom winning the AL Cy Young Award. He is a player who is fragile in the game, pretty fragile in real life, but 13-2, led the league with 262 strikeouts, a 1.03 whip, 6-1 strikeout to walk ratio, and 2/3 of his starts were quality starts for the Texas Rangers. Ricky Tiedemann of the Toronto Blue Jays finished second in the voting. In the National League, Framber Valdez of the Milwaukee Brewers, 16-8 with a 3.21 ERA after leaving Houston, is the Cy Young Award winner. AL Most Valuable Player, Wyatt Langford of the Rangers, 303 average, 47 homers, 102 ribbies, a monster season. I do note that despite our 75-87 record, Anthony Santander did get a lone vote for American League MVP, and National League MVP, a unanimous winner, Jackson Chourio of the Milwaukee Brewers, monster season, 348 average, 42 homers, and 123 ribbies for the brilliant 21-year-old. You can see he led the league in runs, hits, steals, batting average, slugging percentage, OPS, WRC plus, and WAR. So moving on from what happened in the league overall over the past several weeks of game time to what we did. You may remember that we had 3 players with team options at the end of last season. We voided the contract of the starting pitcher, Matthew Boyd. He is now a free agent. We exercised our option to bring back Austin Meadows. He will be in the mix to be a starting corner outfielder for us again, most likely only against right-handed pitching. And then we traded away Michael Conforto, and we actually traded away a few other players. Jake Bowers, we traded away Michael Conforto, traded away Oswaldo Cabrera. And we also traded away the relief pitcher, Michael Tonkin. So did not get much in return, and this was the part that was difficult for us because we wanted to get all of those players off of our books before we would get in a position where their contracts, which were major league guaranteed contracts for the most part, would roll over and become guaranteed for the 2026 season. So what that meant was, given the fact that our scouting was a problem for the first couple weeks of this episode till we got a new scout on board, and it's still problematic right now because we're still not up to speed with everybody. We had to just kind of make some guesses at what we were getting. We did get some cash back in return, which should help us going forward. We'll talk about that shortly. The three most interesting players we got back were Tyler Black in a trade with Milwaukee. You can see 25 years old, but he still has one option year left. Looks like he could be a potentially useful middle infielder. He's been kind of up and down between the majors and AAA over the last couple years with Milwaukee. Certainly could be in the mix to be a utility infielder this coming year. We also got Trey Cruz, older, 27 years old, but he does still have 3 option years left. Picked him up. He's never even made it into the majors at the age of 27, but he's a switch hitting outfielder with a little bit of speed, competent defensively. If we have some injury issues, he may help us a bit going forward. And then the last guy, we got Brett Beatty, 26-year-old from the Mets organization. His career over these 2 fictional years hasn't really gone the way that he would have hoped. Played only 33 games in the majors for the Mets last year, spent most of the season in AAA Syracuse. 26 years old now, a borderline decent left-handed hitter. Hope that maybe he's usable against right-handed pitching. The main thing with him is that he had an option year left. As I mentioned, the guys who we traded away all were guys who were on major league contracts, many of whom did not have option years. And then we also went through and we waived and DFA'd several players with major league contracts just to kind of clear them off of our books and not be guaranteeing them contracts. So as you probably saw, if you were looking carefully, only have 26 players on our 40-man roster at this point, with the players that we traded away or just waived and DFA'd and moved on from. We did bring back a number of our arbitration-eligible players, O'Neal Cruz, Estuary Ruiz. We did make an offer to Mason Miller. We'll talk about that more going forward. Brought back Shea Langeliers to be our catcher. We decided to bring back both of the players we picked off waivers last year that we were unsure about, the veteran pitchers Gabe Spire and Ian Hamilton. I think that's about it for the arbitration eligible players that we brought. Oh, Colby Allard, another one who we did bring back as well. I think that was it. And then we made an offer to bring back Nick Ahmed as our starting shortstop. We talked about at the end of the last episode. He doesn't bring much to the table offensively, but he is still a pretty good defensive player. And it was not a crazy contract, $1.5 million for this upcoming year, and then 2 team options after that. So felt that if there was a better option that was out there, the money that we're paying Ahmed would not ruin us. But honestly, when we looked ahead at the potential free agents, I couldn't really see anything too interesting, unfortunately. So that's a high level of a few of the decisions that we've made over the past month. The main thing, though, is that trading away some of those arbitration-eligible players, refusing some of those options, trading away an option, and then just waiving and DFAing people has opened up a little bit of money for us to play with this upcoming offseason. Scouting and player development are both lower than they were a year ago at this point, and honestly, the draft budget is too, because we had put all that crazy money into the draft budget a year ago, hoping that there might be some very expensive players looking for way more than slot that would fall. And that scenario really did not develop. So we ended up generating a nice profit for ownership, even though they still decided to cut our budget by $4 million for this upcoming year. Just to hone in on the scouting director that we did hire, I talked about him last episode at a high level, but he's outstanding with international scouting, excellent with amateurs and major leaguers, and good with minor leaguers, is a highly favored tools scout. And he will hopefully be our scout for the next 5 years and well into the future, so we don't end up in the situation that we just were at the beginning of this offseason. And in the back and forth that I started in the first 10 days, 2 weeks of the off season, when I was shopping the 5 guys I could to just see the potential options for some players that I didn't likely want to bring back, and then trying to hope that eventually I'd have a scout to be able to figure out the players who were being offered to me, I got so wrapped up in that I forgot to get player development started on the first day of the off season, which did not make me very happy. I think it was about a week and a half into the off season when I had the horrifying thought that I had not sent anyone to the player development lab. Fortunately, there was still enough time that we could begin 3 to 4 month programs. So they've been going on for a couple of weeks at this point, and you can see they've still got the 3 to 4 months remaining. We really kind of switched things up this year, and we've only got a few major league players who are in the development lab. And since this is a team that we're trying to build for the future, we've got more of our prospects in the development complex this offseason. Tyler Soderstrom and Lawrence Butler, who are perhaps, actually not perhaps, who are not coincidentally 2 of the youngest guys on our 40-man roster, along with Cameron Cawley and Lawrence Butler, 2 of the other 4 youngest guys on our 40-man roster, are all in the development lab. Both Soderstrom and Butler, who split this past year between AAA and the majors, should be full-time major leaguers next year. Soderstrom is going to be taking over at first base for Mr. Noda, who was one of the guys that we just ended up not making an arbitration offer to because there was really no market for him. And Lawrence Butler will likely be taken over in the outfield for Michael Conforto, who we traded away. So working on plate discipline with both of them. You can see Soderstrom is on track. Cruz Schoolcraft, who we picked up number 10 overall this year, is on track in the very early stages in terms of improving his control. Cameron Cawley, we picked him up in a trade. More difficult program, working on quality of contact, and he's frustrated right now. Duncan Marston, our number 4 overall pick from 2024, is working on improving control and excelling with that. Daryl Hernandez, another guy who split this past year between AAA and the majors, working on improving his defense at second base, and then we're probably going to put him through some speed programs after that. He's excelling right now. Noah Franco, our second-round pick from this past year, we're going for it all with him, working on generating bat speed, trying to improve his ability to hit home runs, and he's excelling in the early stages of that relatively difficult program. And last but not least, Jai Watterson is doing endurance training. He is a young pitcher with decent potential who was an international amateur free agent we signed earlier this year. And I mentioned earlier that we traded away 4 players. They were all 1-for-1 trades, and then when we could, we took a little bit of cash back, but nothing that material. I think it was a couple $1 million between the 4 trades. But the 4th guy that we traded for is not on the Major League roster. Anthony Siegler, catcher from the Yankees organization, 26 years old, has never played in the majors, solid defensively, not much of a hitter. And you can see our scouting issues still are pervasive, particularly away from the major league team, and that we only have low scouting accuracy on him. But he was a body that we could get in return who still has 3 option years and is a competent defensive catcher if we ever needed him as a backup in the majors over the next few seasons. So we figured we would roll the dice on him. As I mentioned, with a lot of those guys, it was just trying to get anything in return for a player that we were going to move on from anyways. So not the 4 most exciting players that we've added into our organization with those trades, but it is what it is. And as we sit here at the start of free agency, fan interest at 38, which is where we were at the start of the season, it had bumped up a bit, and then it regressed somewhat. We still are going to be likely, well, not likely, we still are definitely going to be losing both Bo Bichette and Tyler O'Neill, who we got small boost to fan interest when we traded for them before the deadline, so we could incur a little more degradation in fan interest, unfortunately, over the next few weeks. As we prepare for free agency, wanted to go through and show the international free agents, and there's one who really stands out. That is Jorge Corona out of Cuba, first baseman. Looks like a potentially very interesting left-handed bat. Another guy that we don't know much about, unfortunately, but the OSA seems pretty bullish on his prospects to hit the ball. But a first baseman who is looking for $24.4 million is not going to be in the mix of people that we will be going after. The rest of the crew was not that exciting. We've made minor league offers to a couple of the guys, and we're trying to scout them to learn more about them. Not the most impressive list of free agents hitting the market this year, unfortunately, because we've got to do something to improve our team. But looking at the batters, you can see there's only a handful of players who are 3-star or higher, and somewhat shockingly for a 75-win team, as I mentioned, 2 of them, Tyler O'Neill and Bo Bichette, were on our team. But there's not really anyone among that top echelon of batters that we can realistically go after. Pitchers, however, there's one who intrigues us, and if you're looking closely, you've already seen who it is down here. We've made an offer to Lucas Giolito. Don't really think we can play at the higher end of the market here with the money that people are looking for. But there are some options in the mid-range of the players who are available. And Giolito himself is actually technically only a 2.5-star player at this point. And he is listed, well, now he's listed as a starting pitcher. I thought he was listed as a reliever, but you can see he was looking for $7.5 million a year over 3 years. We've offered him less than that over 3 years, 1-year contract, then a team option for the second year, but there is a player option for the third season. So it's likely either a 1-year or a 3-year deal. Think, though, that Mr. Giolito could help make up for the fact that we did move on from Matthew Boyd this offseason. We did move on from Domingo Germán this offseason, both players who started for us this year. And as we talked about in the previous episode, 2 other potential starters and some of the younger, better pitchers on our team, Mason Miller and Mitch Spence, are both out for most or all of next season. So we needed some help for the rotation, and I think that the Giolito contract is something that we can afford. So even with that offer that we've made to him, I'm still looking at a little over $20 million to spend. Not necessarily anyone all that interesting to spend it on, unfortunately, but we'll see what we can do, because after a 77-win season and a 75-win season, would be good to do a little better this upcoming year. But we've got a fair amount of holes to fill. The free agent class is not particularly exciting, especially at the level that we're going to be playing. But we're going to have to get creative. And back to the injured players before we finish up the episode. Mason Miller is now arbitration eligible, so we had to spend almost 2.6 million to get him back in his first arbitration eligible year, even though he's likely to miss most or all of this upcoming season. We did peruse the trade market for him when we didn't have a scout on board, and even over the last couple weeks when we've had the scout on board. But given that he still is a valuable resource for it, we wanted to know more about the potential players that we'd be getting in return. So I recently shopped Mason Miller, and well, we wouldn't see it now, but I think it was actually today. The days in baseball land are coming together at this point. And you can see that, so I don't know why. I think these are for Mason Miller, but I didn't click shop now. That's a little odd. Let me just click shop now again, and maybe it'll be the same list. Yeah, it's a different list. You can see there's still players with some skill that we can get for Mason Miller, but even more so than the potential major leaguers we can get for Mason Miller. What we have been doing is looking at prospect packages for him. Okay, and that's the one where we had made the shop attempts earlier today, but I don't know why they were showing up like that rather than in the in a different format. But we just don't know enough about some of these players, and I also don't know if I want to be giving up a Clark Schmidt or a Mitch Spence along with Mason Miller. But there are some interesting guys for us to think about. So if there's anyone that piques your interest as I kind of highlight some of these better players we could potentially get back for Lizama, we could get back for Miller, let me know. Jesus Lizama, a 17-year-old second baseman in the Blue Jays system, is the highest rated prospect, at least by the star ratings. But as you can see, we only have average scouting accuracy on him. So I'm going to wait the next couple weeks to get more information on him. Chase DeLauder, we do have very high accuracy on him, 24 years old, so he might be a little older than optimal for us. I also don't know if I want to trade away both Miller and Spence, but he is an interesting prospect for us to be thinking about. Jorge Noria of the Mets organization, another guy that we're scouting. He could be interesting, but we're certainly not going to be trading away Miller until we've got high scouting accuracy on the potential players in return. You saw this earlier at the other screen. Paul Skeens, he's really intriguing to me. Those of you who have followed me through the years know that I love pitching. Only a 3-pitch guy. He hasn't been exceptional in his first 2 years in the majors with Pittsburgh, but still has plus stuff, better than average movement, average control, 60 stamina, ground ball pitcher that throws close to triple digits. We'd have to give them away Darryl Hernandez in addition to $1 million in cash to bring him on board, but still something that we are going to at least investigate. We do have very high scouting accuracy on him already, but kind of, as I mentioned, waiting to see how some of these other players look before I make decisions. Another guy who intrigued me a little bit was Nelvi Marte from the Cincinnati Reds. Think he could be an interesting infielder for us. He's been kind of bouncing between AAA, AA, and the majors over the last few seasons with the Cincinnati organization. Hasn't really found a full-time role with them. He is a guy that we already do have very high scouting accuracy on. Joshua Mears from the Padres organization. I'm less intrigued by him just because I think he's going to strike out an insane amount and struggle to make contact, but certainly a potentially very interesting power hitter. Luis Matos from the Giants organization, another guy that we're scouting, looks like a really good contact hitter in the outfield, competent defensively, but he is fragile right now in terms of his injury proneness. Probably not the direction that we would go, but we won't know until we get scouting reports on him and some of the other players. Those are kind of some of the highlights of guys that we could get for Miller at this point. As I mentioned, Lizama optically as a 5-star prospect is real attractive, but we'll see what he looks like when we've got very high scouting accuracy. He's only 17 years old, so he's still probably several years away from the majors, if he even makes the majors. And in addition to giving up Miller, we'd have to give up the best pitcher on our team and Clark Schmidt to bring him on board. So the price for some of these guys is still pretty high. Hunter Owen, another guy that I didn't mention, wasn't really interested in him. He does look like a potential two-way guy, but I don't think he's really a major league quality pitcher, and he's just someone who doesn't really have any defensive spot to play. So I guess I could have at least scouted him. Maybe I'll go ahead and scout him just for the heck of it, since he'll probably be offered to us again, but I didn't think he was one of the more interesting options out there that we might be able to get for Mason Miller. And with that, we are finally all caught up. We still will be a bit behind as far as our scouting. It's probably going to take us the next 6 to 12 months of game time to be to the position where we've got pretty much very high scouting accuracy on just about anybody that we'd be involved and interested in, except for the new classes when they come out. But we'll try to minimize the fog of war as much as possible by being strategic with our scouting in the coming weeks. Right now, we're scouting a lot of the guys who are on the free agent market just to ensure we know as much as possible about them. And then, of course, you can see some of these younger guys that we could conceivably get offered in a deal for Mason Miller. We're trying to get more accurate scouting reports on them as well. So we will dig into the offseason and free agent period in earnest in our next episode. As I mentioned, other than a few minor leaguers, the only offer that we have out there that's really interesting is the offer to Lucas Giolito to potentially join our rotation and hopefully help make it better than it is right now. Until our next episode, thanks so much for watching and hope you have a great day.